Welcome to another episode of Keep Middlesex Moving's Mobility Matters podcast. I am your host today, Brian Tobin, and today I am joined by George Fallat of Middlesex County Office of Engineering, where he's a supervising engineer. Welcome.
Thank you, Brian. Thanks for having me.
Glad to have you here. In today's episode, we're going to be discussing work zone safety. Work zone safety is important because April is Work Zone Safety Month, and as the listeners will soon realize, work zones are going to start popping up as frequently as the flowers and the rainstorms and all the sunshine that we're about to have. We wanted to make sure that we had a podcast between two individuals who have been working with work zone safety and working through some various committees for decades, and just sort of talk about this and how the motorists and some of the innovations and some other things that are just in the work zone safety field. So, George, could you tell us a little bit about why we invited you here? I mean, I know, but the listeners need to know.
Okay, so I'm a traffic engineer. My official title is Supervising Engineer for the county, for Middlesex County, but really my role and capacity has been in traffic safety and traffic engineering. So I'm basically doing the traffic signals, all traffic control devices on county roads. So that's where my charge comes in, and that includes work zone safety issues. Also, we do a lot of construction work at the county, so I review the traffic control plans for those different projects. And I also teach with Rutgers University. I teach the traffic control coordinator class. It's a 3-day class, and I do the portion of it that covers the manual and uniform traffic control devices, which is basically serves as the standard, as the requirement for signs and pavement markings, not just in work zones, but also generally speaking on public roadways. That's the guiding standard. So I teach that, and I also teach a couple classes on signs and pavement markings and traffic control devices. So this is an area that's a particular interest of mine, and both professionally and personally. So happy to be here to talk about work zone safety.
Most of the listeners probably know that I used to work at Rutgers, and our paths probably intersected many times within the Work Zone Safety Conference Planning Committee. Could you talk a little bit about what that conference has done for the last 25, 30 years in the state of New Jersey and what it's still doing to this day?
Sure. The Work Zone Safety Conference, it's something that I've attended. I haven't had a hand in organizing that, but the Work Zone Safety Conference really kind of brings together contractors. It brings together engineering people, planners. It brings together a wide range of people involved in work zone safety, and it basically offers different courses, different sessions on work zone safety. And actually, I'm participating in one of the sessions, this safety conference, where we're going to be talking about work zone safety with a focus on county roads and local roadways. So that's kind of coming up, and that's an area we're really kind of looking to focus and emphasize. But it's a really big audience. Like I said, it's law enforcement. You have a lot of utility contractors and so forth. It's an interesting conference. It's a good time for everybody to kind of get together from various different backgrounds and talk about a topic which is of concern for all those different groups.
The work zone is representation of a lot of work that's come together all at one point. So the planners have done all their planning, the engineers have done all their engineering, and now the contractors and labor unions and the labor force is now doing the work in this construction zone. So it's taken a long time to get to this point. When you have this work zone, it's again representative of taxpayer dollars that have gone into it, and we want to make sure that it's kept safe. So there's so many players, as you're talking about at the Work Zone Conference, that are participating because they're members of this event that's finally happening. But what's so important about it is work zones are a place that are not normal for drivers. It's a place where, as much as you referenced, the MUTCD discusses having a uniform way of setting up a work zone, it's still a foreign sort of location. Can you maybe talk about that a little bit?
Sure. So the work zone, as you mentioned, Brian, represents a change, right? It represents a change to normal traffic patterns and normal sort of driving patterns, if you will, be it from detours, lane closures. When you introduce that kind of change, it can become stressful for a motorist, not just a motorist, but also for pedestrians. And you have workers that are performing various tasks in that work zone. It's really kind of a unique situation in terms of what we're used to for normal driving. And it's a disruption to that normal driving pattern. And it's really important that you have the appropriate signs and pavement markings and alerts to tell motorists what's happening in anticipation of a changed traffic pattern. And the MUTCD, really, one of the things that we strive for in the MUTCD is to get that level of uniformity. So if you're closing a right lane, for example, whether it's done on a county road, a state highway, you're closing it in a consistent manner that's predictable and people are accustomed to it. So that's where the MUTCD really comes in, is to provide that consistency. And really through that consistency, you're providing the level of safety. You're providing that level of expectancy for motorists and pedestrians coming into the work zone.
We focused a little bit already of the discussion on the motorists, but as we continue to move forward with how we approach traffic and fatalities and crashes in the state of New Jersey with the Target Zero bill and Middlesex County's efforts with Vision Zero, even though this is a divergence and a change in the way traffic is, we can still look at construction workers and equipment that's within the work zone as a test case for pedestrians. And then also you also reference that actual pedestrians are walking through work zones as well. So it's also about trying to maintain a safe balance for everyone involved. I represented the construction industry for so long, and this is like their number one issue, is to make sure that their workers go home safe every day. And they've implemented so many different ways of trying to draw attention to it over the years. So I just sort of rambled on a little bit, but could you talk about like what's going on inside the work zone, how the MUTC might be also addressing it for actual pedestrians as well, but sort of looking at those two constituencies the same?
Sure. In terms of the worker safety, the traffic control coordinator class so I do the MUTCD part, but that's just one aspect of that course. There's a real big focus and emphasis on worker safety. So you have OSHA, who's involved in that training. You have POSH, which is the public OSHA, if you will. You have a lot of training that's going on for the workers to alert them of things like blind spots where you're doing construction work. Another big emphasis point is actually apparel. That's another thing. The MUTCD, I talked about signs and pavement markings. The MUTCD also has requirements for what workers are supposed to wear. They have very specific requirements, in fact, for safety vests, the type of vests they have to wear. There's a lot of stuff out there on the market, right? They have a very specific requirements in terms of the color, in terms of the size, in terms of the type of apparel that a worker is supposed to be wearing. So that's a big thing for worker safety that is emphasized in the MUTCD, and also, again, through OSHA, through a lot of the training they do. As far as pedestrians and cyclists, I think last year I looked at some statistics. In 2022, there was 121 fatalities in work zones. Of those, roughly a little under a quarter of those were pedestrians. The predominant people who are fatalities are drivers and passengers, but there is a large percentage of pedestrians as well. So that's a big focus too. And the MUTCD, it's been published. There's a new version of the MUTCD that was published and we're required to follow in 2023. The state of New Jersey adopted it in 2024. There's a big focus on pedestrian safety, accommodating pedestrians, particularly disabled pedestrians, and making sure that they can navigate the work area, to make sure that we're maintaining a pedestrian path in work zones. And I think that's something that has really gotten a much bigger focus in the new MUTCD, and hopefully kind of moving forward, we're not just telling pedestrians, okay, the sidewalk's ending, you're on your own now. That's really not acceptable any longer. We have to accommodate cyclists and pedestrians through work zones. So that's something that really is been given a lot more emphasis.
That's really encouraging, especially coming from Keep Middlesex Moving. Our primary goal here is to make sure that people can get to where they need to get to safely, reliably, and with an accessible path. We've had so many discussions with individuals with disabilities who are not able to access just some of the regular built infrastructure. So hearing that they'll be able to access and hopefully safely through these work zones is going to be a plus for them. You don't see this so much on a Route 78. But if you're talking about a county road like County Road 531, people are using the built infrastructure, and it's just making sure that everybody has access to it is so important. So I'm really encouraged to hear that.
No, I think it's a good thing and something we're required to do and something we should be doing. It's the right thing to do. And you're right, Brian. I think you're going to see on interstate highways, obviously it's a different animal, but a lot of the local roads, county roads, a big emphasis area. I know when we review projects, that's a big thing for us. We want to make sure that pedestrians are accommodated, the sidewalks, if there has to be a sidewalk closure, that the pedestrians are safely directed, and also that there's appropriate accommodations for mobility impaired pedestrians. That's important. The ADA, Americans with Disabilities Act, has gotten a lot more emphasis and people are recognizing the importance of that. So that's a big focus now.
Shifting it back to drivers and trying to figure out how it is that we can make the work zone safe, but also have teeth behind some of it. What are some of the ways that work zones are enforced in terms of speed and those kinds of situations?
Typically, when we design a work zone, it's typically designed for the posted speed. Like there's certain parameters that we have, like if you're shifting traffic over, it's a function of the speed, right? So typically we would use the existing speed for the design of the work zone. As far as enforcement goes, there was a big emphasis in having a police presence there. Even just having a police officer there, having a police car with lights going, just to alert motorists. The contractors really like that because you had that police presence, and that's really important. As far as other enforcement measures, some states, for example, in Maryland, they have automated speed enforcement in work zones. I don't know if that's ever going to happen in New Jersey, but hey, you never know. I know that's something that's been talked about. Some of the other things, the traffic control coordinator program has a person that's actually designated for traffic control. So it used to be you pull one of the laborers off, or you were pulling one of the guys who were operating the backhoe, take a look at the signs and make sure everything set up properly. The traffic control coordinator, so any work you're doing on a state highway, if you're doing any work on the Jersey Turnpike, Garden State Parkway, other bi-state roadways in New Jersey, you're required to have a full-time traffic control coordinator that is specifically designated to do traffic control coordination for that work zone. There's like 14 different roles and responsibilities. It's not their responsibility to design the plan, but it's their responsibility to oversee and make sure everything is in working order. All the signs are installed according to the plan and are done properly. They don't have enforcement capability, but I think that's something that really does help make sure that traffic control is what it should be. And to have that designated person with that responsibility, I think has been huge for work zones.
Could you talk about why traffic control coordinators are so important in New Jersey and the significance and importance that they've given to them as being required?
You do any work on a state highway or like the Turnpike Authority, again, the New Jersey Turnpike, the Garden State Parkway, any work on a state highway, you are required to have a designated traffic control coordinator. So that person has to have 4,000 hours of actual field work, so roughly 2 years. They have to go through the 3-day course. They have to pass a test. They have to get updates every 2 years, a refresher course. There's very specific requirements. There's very specific roles and responsibilities for them. They have, I think for the state of New Jersey, having a person designated full-time devoted to traffic control has been really a game changer. I think that's really helped tremendously in terms of making sure that contractors are putting the appropriate signs up, that the signs are maintained properly, that variable message signs are proper working order. And also when the work is not happening, that the signs are covered. That's one of the other roles and responsibilities, and making sure the contractors are removing signs or covering signs when the traffic control is not in effect, right? Because that can be very deceiving. If you have ramp closed ahead and ramp's not closed, people aren't going to pay attention to it. So having that designated person to make sure that those types of things are done and making sure the contractor is doing what they're supposed to be doing, I think has been huge. I think that's a real game changer. And back in the old days, you just didn't have that. You had somebody who wasn't designated full-time. You had somebody who may have been an operator, or somebody who just kind of drove by and wasn't really an employee of that particular contractor or that particular agency doing that on a full-time basis. I think it's been very helpful.
It's really great that New Jersey especially has required such strict or extensive training. It just so it's good to hear that it's just not like a 6 hours of education that they got online. These individuals are going through such extensive training for this, and that they have such an expertise in it. What else do we want to talk about? The construction of a work zone itself that the driver should be aware of?
I think as a motorist, just being aware that there are workers in the area, just being a little bit more conscientious, being a little kinder, driving through the work area, not trying to drive aggressively. It's a change in the regular traffic pattern. And I think motorists just need to be aware of it, that it's something different.
I mean, just having a little bit of patience and grace out there. No one's driving through their office space that day.
Yeah, exactly. Take a few more minutes, leave earlier, try not to stress yourself out, and be kind. Just be kind out there when you're driving. We tend to get inside an automobile and we just lose our sort of personalities and kindness, but try to be kind when you're going through a work zone, and try to be kind in general when you're traveling on the roadway. Just be aware that there's other folks out there and there are fatalities that occur in work zones. So just be aware of that. Be conscientious of the workers who are there trying to improve the roadway.
Yeah, I don't know if this is something that others do, but I know that my wife and I, when we get in the car, starting basically April 1st to the end of construction season, even if we know where we're going and we've been there a million times, like our parents' house, we always type into Google or Waze, how long is it going to take to get there? And then we kind of just see if there's a construction zone on the route, just to make sure that we're not stressing ourselves out. But what I'm finding most impressive is as technology advances, they're also giving us warnings about construction zones and that things could take a little bit longer. And we have the ability to tell ourselves and to inform ourselves to help us be that way, but we still get in our own heads. And that often happens when we're inside of our own cars, I think.
With all the new technologies, we should be informed, and try and inform yourself before you head out there. I know when I make a trip, you'll put it in Google, you'll try and figure out the time, how much time it's going to take. But I think it's important that when you are traveling, you just make yourself aware of construction zones and what kinds of things you can expect out there.
I think we've covered construction zones a lot, and I think we are here to make sure that we're trying to remind drivers to be safe. Remember that there are people working and making their rides eventually better at some point, and that it's all being done with a lot of work that's been ahead of time, such as the work that George has been doing. First, training individuals in the work zone, helping set them up, and also working within the county to help make sure that the projects are necessary and needed. So is there anything you'd like to add before we wrap up, George?
I think the final message is, again, be kind when you're driving. Take your time, take more time than you normally would trying to leave. Don't stress yourself out trying to race. That's the advice I give to my kids. And I think that's the best advice I can give to anybody, frankly. We're all humans behind that car or in that work zone. So just try to be kind.
Well said. Well, thank you, George. Thank you for your time, and thank you for being a part of this podcast.
Okay. Well, thank you.
And with that, I want to thank you for joining us on KMM's Mobility Matters podcast. We will be sure to include links to the information we discussed under the description, and you can always find us at Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, and your favorite podcast streaming service. To learn more about KMM, please visit us at www.kmm.org. Until next time.
This ad is disseminated under the sponsorship of NJTPA and FHWA in the interest of information exchange.